The orientation. As I turned the rental car onto Morrie Street in West Newton, a quiet suburb of Boston, I had a cup of coffee in one hand and a cellular phone between my ear and shoulder. I was talking to a TV producer about a piece we were doing. My eyes jumped from the digital clock. My return flight was in a few hours to the mailbox numbers on the three-lined suburban street. The car radio was on the all-news station. This was how I operated 5 things at once. Roll back the tape, I said to the producer. Let me hear that part again. Okay, he said, it's gonna take a second. Suddenly I was upon the house. I pushed the brakes, spilling coffee in my lap as the car stopped. I caught a glimpse of a large Japanese maple tree and 3 figures sitting near it in the driveway. A young man and a middle-aged woman flanking a small old man in a wheelchair. Morrie. At the sight of my old professor, I froze. Hello, the producer said in my ear. Did I lose? I had not seen him in 16 years. His hair was thinner, nearly white, and his face was gaunt. I suddenly felt unprepared for this reunion. For one thing, I was stuck on the phone, and I hoped that he hadn't noticed my arrival so that I could drive around the block a few more times, finish my business, get mentally ready. But Morrie, this new, withered version of a man I had once known so well, was smiling at the car, hands folded in his lap, waiting for me to emerge. Hey, the producer said again, are you there? For all the time we had spent together, for all the kindness and patience Morrie had shown me when I was young, I should have dropped the phone and jumped from the car, run and held him and kissed him hello. Instead, I killed the engine and sunk down off the seat as if I were looking for something. Yeah, I am here, I whispered and continued my conversation with the TV producer until we were finished. I did what I had become best at doing. I tended to my work even while my dying professor waited on his front lawn. I am not proud of this, but that is what I did. Now, 5 minutes later, Morrie was hugging me, his thinning hair rubbing against my cheek. I had told him I was searching for my keys. That's what had taken me so long in the car, and I squeezed him tighter as if I could crush my little lie. Although the spring sunshine was warm, he wore a windbreaker and his legs were covered by a blanket. He smelled faintly sore, the way people on medication sometimes do. With his face pressed close to mine, I could hear his labored breathing in my ear. My old friend, he whispered, you have come back at last. He rocked against me, not letting go, his hands reaching up for my elbows as I bent over him. I was surprised at such affection after all these years. But then in the stone walls I had built between my present and my past, I had forgotten how close we once were. I remembered graduation day, the briefcase, his tears at my departure, and I swallowed because I knew deep down that I was no longer the good, gift-bearing student he remembered. I only hoped that for the next few hours I could fool him. Inside the house, we sat at a walnut dining room table near a window that looked out on the neighbor's house. Morrie fussed with his wheelchair, trying to get comfortable, as was his custom. He wanted to feed me, and I said, all right. One of the helpers, a stout Italian woman named Connie, cut up bread and tomatoes and brought containers of chicken salad, hummus, and tabbouleh. She also brought some pills. Morrie looked at them and sighed. His eyes were more sunken than I remembered them, and his cheekbones more pronounced. This gave him a harsher, older look until he smiled, of course, and the sagging cheeks gathered up like curtains. Mitch, he said softly, you know that I am dying. I knew. All right then. Morrie swallowed the pills, put down the paper cup, inhaled deeply, then let it out. Shall I tell you what it's like? What it's like to die? Yes, he said. Although I was unaware of it, our last class had just begun. It's my freshman year. Morrie is older than most of the teachers, and I am younger than most of the students. Having left high school a year early, to compensate for my youth on campus, I wear old grey sweatshirts and box in a local gym and walk around with an unlit cigarette in my mouth. Even though I do not smoke, I drive a beat-up Mercury Cougar with the windows down and the music up. I seek my identity in toughness, but it is Morrie's softness that draws me, and because he does not look at me as a kid trying to be something more than I am, I relax. I finish that first course with him and enroll for another. He is an easy marker. He does not much care for grades. One year, they say, during the Vietnam War, Morrie gave all his male students A's to help them keep their student deferments. I begin to call Morrie coach the way I used to address my high school track coach. Morrie likes the nickname. Coach, he says, all right, I will be your coach and you can be my player. You can play all the lovely parts of life that I am too old for now. Sometimes we eat together in the cafeteria. Morrie, to my delight, is even more of a slob than I am. He talks instead of chewing, laughs with his mouth open, delivers a passionate thought through a mouthful of egg salad, the little yellow pieces spewing from his teeth. It cracks me up. The whole time I know him, I have two overwhelming desires to hug him and to give him a napkin. The classroom. The sun beamed in through the dining room window, lightening up the hardwood floor. We had been talking there for nearly 2 hours. The phone rang yet again, and Morrie asked his helper, Connie, to get it. She had been jotting the callers' names in Morrie's small black appointment book. Friends, meditation teachers, a discussion group, someone who wanted to photograph him for a magazine. It was clear I was not the only one interested in visiting my old professor. The Nightline appearance had made him something of a celebrity, but I was impressed with, perhaps even a bit envious of, all the friends that Morrie seemed to have. I thought about the buddies that circled my orbit back in college. Where had they gone? You know, Mitch, now that I am dying, I have become much more interesting to people. You were always interesting. Oh, Morrie smiled. You are kind. No, I am not, I thought. Here's the thing, he said. People see me as a bridge. I am not as alive as I used to be, but I am not yet dead. I am sort of in between. He coughed, then regained his smile. I am on the last great journey here, and people want me to tell them what to pack. The phone rang again. Morrie, can you talk? Connie asked. I am visiting with my old pal now, he announced. Let them call back. I cannot tell you why he received me so warmly. I was hardly the promising student who had left him 16 years earlier. Had it not been for Nightline, Morrie might have died without ever seeing me again. I had no good excuse for this, except the one that everyone these days seems to have. I had become too wrapped up in the silent song of my own life. I was busy. What happened to me? I asked myself. Morrie's high, smoky voice took me back to my university years when I thought rich people were evil. A shirt and tie were prison clothes, and life without freedom to get up and go motorcycle beneath you. Freeze in your face down the streets of Paris into the mountains of Tibet was not a good life at all. What happened to me? The 80s happened. The 90s happened. Death and sickness and getting fat and going bald happened. I traded lots of dreams for a bigger paycheck. I never even realized I was doing it. Yet here was Morrie talking with the wonder of our college years as if I would simply been on a long vacation. Have you found someone to share your heart with? He asked. Are you giving to your community? Are you at peace with yourself? Are you trying to be as human as you can be? I squirmed, wanting to show I had been grappling deeply with such questions. What happened to me? I once promised myself I would never work for money, that I would join the Peace Corps, that I would live in beautiful, inspirational places. Instead, I had been in Detroit for 10 years now, at the same workplace, using the same bank, visiting the same barber. I was 37, more efficient than in college, tied to computers and modems and cell phones. I wrote articles about rich athletes who, for the most part, could not care less about people like me. I was no longer young for my peer group, nor did I walk around in grey sweatshirts with unlit cigarettes in my mouth. I did not have long discussions over egg salad sandwiches about the meaning of life. My days were full, yet I remained much of the time unsatisfied. What happened to me? Coach, I said, suddenly remembering the nickname. Morrie beamed. That's me, I am still your coach. He laughed and resumed his eating, a meal he had started 40 minutes earlier. I watch him now, his hands working gingerly, as if he were learning to use them for the very first time. He could not press down hard with a knife, his fingers shook. Each bite was a struggle. He chewed the food finely before swallowing, and sometimes it slid out the sides of his lips, so that he had to put down what he was holding to dab his face with a napkin. The skin from his wrist to his knuckles was dotted with age spots, and it was loose like skin hanging from a chicken soup bone. For a while we just ate like that, a sick old man, a healthy younger man, both absorbing the quiet of the room. I would say it was an embarrassed silence, but I seemed to be the only one embarrassed. Dying, Morrie suddenly said, is only one thing to be sad over, Mitch. Living unhappily is something else. So many of the people who come to visit me are unhappy. Why? Well, for one thing, the culture we have does not make people feel good about themselves. We are teaching the wrong things, and you have to be strong enough to say if the culture doesn't work, doesn't buy it. Create your own. Most people can't do it. They are more unhappy than me, even in my current condition. I may be dying, but I am surrounded by loving, caring souls. How many people can say that? I was astonished by his complete lack of self-pity. Morrie, who could no longer dance, swim, bathe, or walk. Morrie, who could no longer answer his own door. dry himself after a shower, or even roll him over in bed. How could he be so accepting? I watched him struggle with his fork, picking at a piece of tomato, missing it the first two times, a pathetic scene, and yet I could not deny that sitting in his presence was almost magically serene. The same calm breeze that soothed me back in college. I shot a glance at my watch, force of habit. It was getting late, and I thought about changing my plane reservation home. Then Morrie did something that haunts me to this day. You know how I am going to die, he said. I raised my eyebrows. I am going to suffocate. Yes, my lungs, because of my asthma, can't handle the disease. It's moving up my body. This ALS. It's already got my legs. Pretty soon it will get my arms and hands. And when it hits my lungs, he shrugged his shoulders. I am sunk. I had no idea what to say, so I said, well, you never know. Morrie closed his eyes. I know, Mitch, you must not be afraid of my dying. I have had a good life, and we all know it's going to happen. I maybe have 4 or 5 months. Come on, I said nervously. Nobody can say I can, he said softly. There's even a little test. A doctor showed me. A test. Inhale a few times. I did as he said. Now once more. But this time, when you exhale, count as many numbers as you can before you take another breath. I quickly exhaled the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I reached 70 before my breath was gone. Good, Morrie said. You have healthy lungs. Now watch what I do. He inhaled, then began his number count in a soft, wobbly voice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. He stopped, gasping for air. When the doctor first asked me to do this, I could reach 23. Now it's 18. He closed his eyes, shook his head. My tank is almost empty. I tapped my thighs nervously. That was enough for one afternoon. Come back and see your old professor, Morrie said when I hugged him goodbye. I would, and I tried not to think about the last time I promised this. In the campus bookstore, I show up for the items on Morrie's reading list. I purchase books that I never knew existed, titles such as Youth, Identity and Crisis, I and Though, The Divided Self. Before college, I did not know the study of human relations could be considered scholarly. Until I met Morrie, I did not believe it, but his passion for books is real and contagious. We began to talk seriously sometimes after class when the room has emptied. He asked me questions about my life, then quotes lines from Erich from Martin Buber, Erikson. Often he defers to their words, footnoting his own advice, even though he obviously thought the same things himself. It is at these times that I realized that he is indeed a professor, not an uncle. One afternoon I am complaining about the confusion of my age, what is expected of me versus what I want for myself. Have I told you about the tension of opposites? He says the tension of opposites. Life is a series of pulls back and forth. You want to do one thing, but you are bound to do something else. Something hurts you, yet you know it shouldn't. You take certain things for granted even when you know you should never take anything for granted. A tension of opposites like a pull on a rubber band, and most of us live somewhere in the middle. Sounds like a wrestling match, I say. A wrestling match, he laughs. Yes, you could describe life that way. So which side wins? I ask. Which side wins? He smiles at me, the crinkled eyes, the crooked teeth. Love wins, love always wins.